React's component mental model makes building apps much more convenient, but those apps, they get complicated over time as the application gets more complex and we have to handle more and more client-side state. So we reach out to libraries like Redux, Tanstack Query, and Apollo to try to facilitate the client-side state management, but they still add a bunch of complexity, they require manual revalidation at times, and lots of lines of code. Instead, Remix says, we don't need that anymore, we have automatic revalidation. Automatic revalidation removes the need to have complex client-side state management, and this is really enabled by the full stack approach that Remix takes to building web applications. So let's see what automatic revalidation is all about, how the full stack data flow works in Remix, and how we can benefit from this evolved full stack model. As you know, Remix is a full stack framework that builds upon the React component model, but adds new concepts to power this full stack nature. Remix introduces loaders, which are functions that run on the server before the component is server-side rendered, allowing us to get the state for a component from a database or an API. And then there are actions. Actions are functions that can be triggered by a component, which allows us to make any edits, mutations, or creates, and these can be handled once again server-side by calling databases or APIs. Now these all work together in order to provide this full stack data flow and this automatic revalidation, which makes building applications in Remix so convenient. But before diving too deeply, I want to take a quick step back and draw some parallels with how we do this with React and APIs. So when we are building a React and an API, what happens is whenever someone goes to your website, they'll make a first request and then they'll receive your React application, your JavaScript single page application, and then this gets loaded in the browser, and then with JavaScript, whether it's on a component mount or on a specific event, your component will go ahead and make get or post or put requests to your APIs in order to provide that full stack functionality. And then you'll use that data that you receive from a get API or the response that you get from a post and a put in order to provide more context to your user. And here's the challenge of writing a React and an API. These APIs, they return responses, and this data will be kept within the client-side state of our JavaScript application. But multiple different components might be accessing similar APIs, and the accessing from one component might require another component to go ahead and fetch the most updated information. In order to do that, we'll need to have a client-side state management solution, which indicates that we need to go ahead and do that. And this is what Remix simplifies with its automatic revalidation concept. So in Remix, when a user accesses a specific URL for our website, here's what happens. First of all, the loader for that route will get executed. In that loader, we might be making database fetches or API requests, and we're getting all of the data for that route. Then that data is passed to the component to be rendered on the server. And this server-side rendered component will be returned to our user. Now, as our user is interacting with our website, it's likely that they'll submit a form. And in this case, if they submit a post form, this will end up calling our action once again on our server. And this action will give us the opportunity to handle this mutation, whether it's a create or an edit, make any calls to our databases or APIs. And what's interesting is that because our Remix application knows that the action for this route has been called, it'll automatically trigger our loader for this page to be reloaded. And this ensures that the component that our end user sees always sees the updated data from our server. So our action will go ahead and trigger our loader to reload and regenerate the page that's needed for our end user. So there's something really interesting to note when our loader gets triggered by an action on this route. There will be a different behavior based on if JavaScript is enabled or not in the user's browser. If it's not enabled, the loader will execute and then will render the page on the server, and a browser navigation will ensure that the end user always sees the most updated version of our website. However, when our browser does have JavaScript enabled, in order to provide the best user experience and most fluid user experience, what will happen is that the loader will execute on the server, but instead of rendering the page once again, it'll return only the data. And then our React application that is already in the browser will update its values with this new data, preventing a page navigation and ensuring the best user experience for our end users. So this is a great example of the progressive enhancement that comes out of the box with Remix. So let's take a look at what this data flow looks like in the code. Here we're looking at a sample file for a specific route. Here's the loader for this route. At this specific route, we'll go ahead and fetch data from databases or APIs, and we'll be able to return this data. Then we'll have a component for our page, in this case, our notes component, and we'll be able to access the data from the loader using the useLoaderData hook, and we'll be able to use this data, rendering it in our application. Now, in our application, we're likely to have a post form, and here, what will happen is when this form gets submitted, our action will then be called. Our action will have access to the form data, persist this data server side, and perform our mutation, and then return any information. And then our action will actually trigger our loader to reload and fetch the most current data from our database or an API in order to ensure that our component and our end user always sees the most updated information. That's it. That was a quick look at the full stack data flows in a Remix application. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.